I've definitely have gone through everything that a woman can go through and a little girl. And so getting that pregnant at 15 didn't make it any better. But I was able to get my own apartment. I worked 2 jobs, went to school, and when I embarked on this guy that owned this real estate company that was renting my apartment to me, he was doing flipping, investing, and so I was just like a sponge because for me, all of the ways of making money I seen in the hood, right? It was like people were doing everything illegal. But now I see someone that looked like me, had a nice brick house with an in-ground pool, driving BMWs and Range Rovers back in the day when like wood was on the side of your car. And I'm close to 50 to let you know. So when having all of these things exposed to me, I got excited and I continued to be in this world of real estate. I started from processing a mortgage, taught myself, became a loan officer after that. Then my mentor told me to go get my real estate license. 3 years into real estate, I got my broker's license, opened up my own company on my 6th year in real estate. And like the rest is history. So it's my goal. I love to see people become homeowners, but home ownership is not for everyone, right? Home ownership is a huge responsibility. People in my day of getting people into homes, I thought everyone deserves to be a homeowner if they are if they're renting, and sometimes rents now in certain areas are just like in every area, right? It's just extremely high. And I'm like, if you can pay rent, you can purchase a home. And I thought that you deserve to do that if you could pay that. And so what the problem was, however, is that everybody's not ready for home ownership because you are now your landlord. Unlike when you're renting and you're able to call the landlord and say, hey, my toilet's overflowing, my furnace is not working, I don't have any heat, I don't have any air. Now you, as the homeowner, are ultimately responsible for everything in your home. So today we're going to talk about home ownership. You guys can always reach out to me if you have any additional questions. You can follow me on IG at the Tiffany Simone Show, Tiffany Simone, Simone Show on IG and on Facebook. So we're gonna skip through here. We're gonna go here. So home ownership advantages. When people are thinking about home ownership and buying a home, there are some advantages. So you can write it off on your taxes. What do you write off on your taxes? On your taxes, you're able to write off the interest. And when you have a mortgage, let me tell you, and that's why it's 30 years, buying a house, you kind of pay for your house 2 or 3 times when you look at your what was called your amortization table. And this is a form that shows you how many payments you're gonna make. But when you first start paying for your home, all the money is going to the bank. They're charging you for buying your home. So you get to write off that interest. That saves you some money. For those who have a certain tax bracket, it works out great. Then it's a long-term investment. Now, when the market crashed in 2008, I was able to get so many people in great houses that were half the price. And so if you lived in, whether it be Clayton County, DeKalb County, Fulton, Gwinnett, every county, everywhere, houses that just dropped out. So people were able to buy a home that was bigger, better than what they probably would have been able to had that market not crashed. So had you bought a home between 2008 and 2012, now you probably have a lot of equity in that home if you bought in the right area. And even if you didn't, there was no such thing as really a right area. Let me take that back. You have a substantial amount of money. I have one client that purchased a home for $88,000. And when we went to sell the house, she has $260,000 sales price. So you're talking about a great day at the bank. There's no investment better than that. So those are great perks, because what does that do? It allows you to create wealth. It allows you to leave a legacy for certain people, because some houses that you get, if you live downtown or by Grant Park or any of these areas, you are so very capable of some of them having 500, 600, or up to $1 million worth of equity. So housing, real estate can definitely build legacy and have the value and equity in there. And what equity is, so for those of you who don't know, let me make sure I'm clear on that. Equity is the amount of cash value you have over the amount owed. So for instance, if you have a home that you purchased for $100,000 and the value of it as an appraised value is 200, then you would have $100,000 worth of equity. And with that equity, if you have a loan and you have good credit, you're able to take out a loan on that equity, or if you sell that house, you're going to walk away with that cash. So that's what equity is. So home ownership disadvantages is decreased mobility, where you can't sell your house, the repairs and the maintenance, as I'm telling you, property taxes. Property taxes can increase. We cannot tell the county what they can and cannot do. We can have a vote, but usually those votes go up, right? They get to win. So if your property taxes go up, that means your payment is going to go up every year that happens. So your payment from the bank may be locked in as long as you have a fixed interest rate, but those taxes and insurance can change at any time. And then there's always additional costs that could happen inside that home that you're needing to do because of repairs. And then if the market crashes, then you lose the value and you can be upside down in your house. And then if you lose your job and don't have money coming in, you could stand to lose your whole entire house due to foreclosure. And those are not fun things. So renting versus owning. So we have a monthly rent that's at $1,200 a month. So that means that annually you're investing $14,400. And in 5 years, that's $72,000. So just think, in 10 years, that's $144,000. And keep going on. So you're thinking that if you're going to rent, you might as well own something, right? Because you're just giving this money away essentially. So what are the questions that you can consider? How much can I afford? What will be the total cost of my home ownership? What is my income? How much do I have saved? And what are my living expenses? How many years do I expect to live in my home? So it ultimately starts with you, your needs versus your wants, the urgency to move, confidence about your income and how much you have saved, and your credit rating. So let's talk about buying a house and how do you buy a house. I don't know if any of you are homeowners or even thought about being homeowners, but like I said, it's not for everyone. The first thing that we look at is your credit and your income. Those are the most two important things. That's what we look at. But after I got licensed with my financials license, I want to look at your whole overall financial picture. I no longer want to put a person in a home that can just buy a house because they have good credit and they make enough money. I want to know that you have an emergency fund. I want to know that you have savings, because once you get into this house, I don't want you to be essentially house poor, can't even afford to furnish it or fix the things that are happening when stuff goes wrong. So it's important to me to make sure that my clients are very much in a healthy position and predicament to become a homeowner. So when you are thinking about buying a home and someone says, yes, you can buy a home with down payment assistance, you don't have to have a down payment. Well, yes, that's essentially true. You don't have to, because in my days, remember I said, I was a little girl that came from a project. So all of my friends have been hardworking people. They were teachers. They worked for the county and the federal government, which were not paying a lot of money. So they're working check to check, and they really couldn't afford to buy a home with a down payment. So what did I do? I knew every down payment assistance program, still do, right? And so I was able to get them in. They only had $500 that they might have needed to bring to the table, less than what they would be if they were renting an apartment. However, when they got in that home, that American dream of being a home ownership, it became an American nightmare when you have a no heat situation, something's going on with your plumbing, and then your alternator goes out. And it always seems to happen around Christmas time, right? And you are a mother, a single mother. What happens, right? Because an accident never just knocks on a door and says, hey, Sienna, Tamisha, I'm coming. Desiree, today is your day. You're going to have to get 3 things ready. No, it doesn't happen that way. It just doesn't happen that way, right? So when we're talking about home ownership, I need for you to understand that the best thing is to be financially disciplined, have a savings, have an emergency fund. And those are 2 different things. And it should be in 2 separate accounts so that when something happens, you're able to fix it, right? And be able to do it with ease. So let's start with the basics. What is a mortgage? A mortgage, we have different types of mortgages that you can qualify for. And having a mortgage means that you're going to go borrow the money because usually nobody has 100, 200, 300 or whatever the amount of that house is. So you got to go to a bank. And again, that's where that credit comes in. You have to qualify with your credit and then obviously be able to afford it. So when we're trying to get ready and I'm trying to prepare, there's a lot of people that I work with where it takes time for them. It might be a year where I'm working with someone sometimes to get their credit repaired, make sure they have enough savings before we go on the journey of home ownership. We talked about the amortization schedule earlier, and all that is the table that shows you how much debt that you're about to be in and how long it's going to take you off to pay that. And remember, you pay back a lot of interest to do so. There is a conventional mortgage, there's a governmental mortgage, which is usually a VA and FHA loans, and you, again, qualify for them accordingly. A fixed interest rate is what you always want to get with a house all the time. A fixed interest rate will make sure that your payment stays the same every single month. The only thing that will change, and when I say your payment, that's your what they call your principal payment with the bank. However, your taxes and your insurance can go up or down annually, so your overall payment can change. But your payment from the bank, once you do your 30-year or 15-year mortgage, that is locked in as long as you have a fixed interest rate. But if you get an adjustable interest rate, that's like being on a roller coaster somewhere, because every time the interest rates go up, your payment is going to go up. And when they go down, yes, the payment is going to go down. But the scary part is how high can that interest rate go? So you never want to be in an adjustable rate mortgage. Qualifying for a mortgage, as I'll keep saying that because I say it, right? So you get pre-qualified with a lender. You tell them, they go through what your income and debt to ratio. So if you went and you decided that you wanted a pretty car and you bought that pretty car before you got your pretty house, that's going to take away from the amount of money that you can buy for your house, right? Some of us have car notes that are higher than most of our house notes. And so you'll know too, before, when you get your credit, if your credit is not together and you start working on your credit, and if you guys follow me, if you have credit issues and you come follow me and get in touch with me on Instagram or Facebook, I can send you a whole do-it-yourself package. Most people pay like $1,000 for this package, but I can send it to you at no cost. So you can start working on it. It gives you all the legal letters that these high-profile attorneys out here that are fixing credit charging, monthly, but you can do it yourself if you're diligent enough to do it. So again, you're going to get pre-approved. You get pre-approved for an amount once you get qualified based on your debt. So it's your credit, your debt to income, which is how much debt versus the income you have coming in. And then they want to see if you have your down payment. But again, there's down payment assistance programs. And in certain counties, they're giving up to $25,000. So there's a lot of programs out there. But again, and me working with my clients is so very important that it's a financial fitness. So you have to have a savings and an emergency fund. And you have to have good rental history. They want to see that you have 2 years of good rental history, 2 years of employment, you have had to have filed your taxes. And if you're self-employed, you can't write off everything and say that, well, I grossed $100,000, but I'm only going to claim $19,000. Well, then you're going to get a $19,000 worth of home. So
Miss
credit versus
Tiffany,
next.
we've
Yes.
got a few questions. Do you want to answer them as they come in, or do you want to wait till the end?
Let's see. I have to get to the question.
No worries. We've got, is there really a difference in renting versus owning if the taxes are able to fluctuate at any time?
Well, definitely there's a difference because you're paying rent to someone else that's getting the a possibility of having a house that might have a lot of equity. You're paying the rent, you're helping make that person an asset. You're paying for that person's asset, right? So renting, and then if you said if the rent, if what went up, the taxes? Is that was the
Uh,
question? Was if the
yes,
taxes?
it says if the taxes are able to fluctuate at any time.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to say they're not going to go up. It's a whole bunch, but with the regentrification that we went through, which means that there's an area that at some point was a poverty-stricken area, and they decided that they were going to come in and make this area great again. So, great example, downtown, Grant Park area, and then certain other counties have other areas that were usually surrounded by lower income projects, and then but it's close to downtown, it's close to in town, wherever that is, right? So those people might have had at that point taxes of $400, $500, $800 because the values were so low. But what happens when people started coming in, fixing it up, building new homes and condos, now it skyrockets. So then yes, that means that your value went up. So if your taxes go up, your taxes mean that your value increased on your house. So that's not a bad thing. You have to give and take. So that means that if your taxes went up and your value went up, that means guess what? You have equity in your house, usually. So no, it's not a bad thing. Home ownership is always a great thing as long as you can afford it. But the taxes are not going to usually just, depending on if it's something in it, with an exception of it being the example that I just gave you, where you're seeing these areas change drastically. So yeah, going from 400 to 4,000 is extremely high, but some of those people are grandfathered in and sometimes protected, especially when they're elderly. But for that instance, no, I'm not going to tell you that because taxes are going to go up, that you should stay renting and making someone else wealthy and giving an asset. Because if you have children, you can't pass down your apartment or your rental home, right? You can't. What's the next question?
It's kind of the same question from two different people. One says, how do you establish a good credit score? And then the other one says, what is an appropriate credit score that's needed for you to be considered?
Well, usually it's a 640, but there's banks that say they can get you done at a 580, but it's a little bit harder. So I always want my clients to have at least a 640 just to make it easier. So we're not, and then to qualify for like down payment programs, you have to have a minimum of usually a 620 and 640 for some of them. And in order to build your credit, for people who have absolutely no credit at all, I tell them to either just try, depending on their age, the younger the better, you can just apply for your first credit card. But understanding that credit is great when you don't owe. So if you have $100 credit card, you can't go and spend $99 of it because it's going to make your credit scores go down. So essentially, you want to keep everything at 25%. The rule of thumb is 30. So I tell people 25 because then maybe it'll be 30%. So you only owe $30 on that $100 card. And then if you can't get approved for that, then there's a thing called a secured credit card that you're able to get. And what the secured credit card means is that you're going to put up the money and give it to that company, that creditor, to get your credit card. So usually it's a $300 secured credit card, and that'll help you build. So after maybe 6, 7, 8 months, you're starting to build that credit score, your score goes up, and now you can probably apply for a couple of more credit cards. What's the next question?
And then this one says, I don't have social media. Is it possible to email the packet? If you are comfortable with it, you can just email it to me and I'll send it to everybody that's on the call today. Make sure you got your email in the chat box, y'all.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It looks like that's it for the questions right now. Guys, I'll just save the rest of the questions for the end. Thank you, Miss Tiffany.
You're so welcome. So I've pretty much gone over all of the ones that I'm skipping through: employment, self-employment, commissions, and all of that. So I don't know if any of you guys may be like waitresses or bartenders, but for those people, just keep in mind that if you're ever working on a commission-based business, that you have to make sure that if you're 1099, I should say, not so much commission based, if you're a 1099 self-employed person, that if you're thinking about buying something, you gotta pay taxes. And a lot of times when people are 1099 versus W-2, like I'm a 1099 individual because I'm a business owner. So for me in my first years, I wrote off everything. I don't care if I made $400,000, $500,000 for the year. Uncle Sam was not getting that money for the first 10 years. The transfer fees, all of the other fees that come along with getting you into this house, those are the closing costs. Sometimes the seller, so the house that you're purchasing, the person that owns that house, as an agent, I'm always going to ask the seller to contribute towards my buyer's closing costs. Sometimes they will, sometimes they will tell you, no, you pay for your own closing costs. And so that's another essential payment, an amount that you need to have saved. And if you're doing down payment, sometimes that can be included in your down payment with your closing costs. Not going to go through all of the points, but in order to purchase a home, so say your credit is good, your job for 2 years, you filed your taxes, you did everything right, and you come to me, we pull your credit within an hour or less. And I don't do loans anymore. I have partners that I work with in the finance department, and they'll pull your credit, ask you a series of questions, do an application. An application is long because when you're buying a house, they want everything. They want to know everything. So there's a lot of documentation involved, right? As you see here, it's tax returns, your W-2s, your paycheck stubs, bank statements, the last statement, types of savings. If you have a 401k, IRA, they want to know everything, all your insurance policies, if they're investment type and policies. So that's a lot of documents. So we want to make sure that before we go out and look for a house, for my clients, you have to have all of this submitted to the loan officer. They have to fully approve you. I don't take clients out on pre-approvals, on a fully approval, and then we're able to go look for a house. You look for a house, sometimes it could take a long time depending on the price range, and you find that house, you fall in love, we submit an offer, hopefully it's accepted, and then the journey starts. And at that point, you're going to get an inspection. Always get an inspection. I don't care if it's a brand new home. You want to get an inspection because even on a brand new home, people are human and they make mistakes. So I want you guys, that's pretty much it with this, maintaining your house, avoiding foreclosure, but those are like kind of deep to get into. So I'll take some more questions. Do we have any more questions on the board? Courtney?
As of right now, nope. I'm looking through right now. Thank you. So that was a wealth of information. Y'all have any questions? Let's see. We've got great information in the chat box. Got a thank you. Wait, if y'all want, you can go ahead and go ahead, Kanisha. You can go ahead and unmute yourselves if you want to ask questions. Antoinette wants to know more about inspections.
It could be about anything. About inspection. So an inspection is when you hire a professional that comes out, that they're going to go through every part of the house, from the roof to if it's a basement or a crawl space, they're going to make sure that plumbing, the electrical, and the foundation, which are the three most important parts to me. They're going to make sure that all those components are checked out. So then they provide you with the report. It contains pictures, and they're going to tell you that, you know, it's dripping under the sink here, or the hot water is not getting hot, or that the age of the furnace or the age of the water heater is fairly old and you're probably going to need a new one within 2 to 10 years. They're going to tell you all of that. Or that the electrical might be faulty or the lines are twisted. So that's the importance of having the inspection. Now, some people sometimes get the appraiser and the inspection a little confused. An appraisal, which is an appraiser who comes out and they give a value to your house. They're going to tell you how much that house is worth for you to be able to sell it at. Did you have a specific question about inspection? Did I answer your question?
Looks like there's no.
Oh,
Oh, go
hey,
ahead.
I have a in the background, but I just wanted to know, like, a list of common repair. Like, is there a base price in the emergency fund that you should set aside for inspections? Like, what are the most common ones?
So an inspection usually goes for about $300 average right now. If it's a very small house, then somebody might charge $225 to $300. And when I say small, like 1,000 to 1,300 square feet, 2-3 bedroom house. Doesn't have a basement or a crawl space, not a lot for them to check out. But again, the larger the house, the more expensive. I've seen them go up to 1,500. So we're talking about a 15,000 square foot house. You pay for that. The last inspection I paid for my house, which is about right at 16,000 square feet, I paid 1,700 for it. But it was well worth the money because I had water literally pouring inside my walls and didn't know. And because my house is just going on 3 years old. So again, brand new house, but it has problems.
Awesome. Thank you. Kanisha, do you want to unmute yourself to ask your question? I see your hand is raised.
Yes. I have a question. So, okay. So my credit is bad, really bad, and my husband's credit is really good. And well, we're looking in the market to potentially buy a house. And his mom is our real estate agent. And she was telling me that I shouldn't sign the deed. Is that true? Because we're married, we have a child, and I just don't feel comfortable not signing the deed, although my credit is bad. What do you think?
Does she like you?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Does she like you? So signing the deed gives you ownership. And so I'm not sure of what her angle of telling you that. But what happens is that signing the deed, if something happens to him, you don't have to go through probate to get the house, because just because you're his wife doesn't mean ultimately you would get the house. You would have to go through a process. But if you're on the deed as a survivor, which means that ultimately you would, then you're fine. So if I was telling my son, and I have a 31-year-old and a 27-year-old rather son, if I was telling them that, it's because I'm like, you know, there's some things that I would say that for, which I won't go through here, but you understand where I'm going with that. So it would be because he can't sell the house if you're on the deed. Does that make sense? But he's ultimately the only one responsible for the mortgage. So if the house forecloses, if you're on the deed, it's only going to affect his credit and not yours.
Thank you. I've got on here, go ahead, Kanisha, you have a follow-up?
I did. Well, like, what if, well, she was saying something because we just had a child together that I still get ownership, so that should be my concern. And then also I paid half of the down payment, which was very expensive. I feel like I'm invested in this property, but yet my name probably won't be on it.
I would definitely want to be a part of, that would have been a must. So I would do everything I could to if I was you.
All right. Thank you.
Awesome. Question, how can you find out where to buy a home that might be in an up-and-coming area so that the value of the house will be more than what you paid? Like when you were talking about the houses around Grant Park.
It's just having like being around real estate agents that are more in the investment arena. Those areas right now, we're kind of, we don't really have, I wouldn't say we don't have an up and coming area, but all of the up and coming areas are already on the floor and they're being, they're growing already. Anything that's about 4 miles away from the downtown corridor has already started developing, all of the areas that people were even scared us to live at. So but it's working with a group of investors or being in an investment club. There's so many things on like Facebook and Instagram where you have like pools of investors and, they're putting things in there. So it just depends, I invest and I flip. So doing this now, the areas, there's always going to be a little pocket, but right now, because we're like 12 years removed from the actual crash, the areas and all the little pockets have already started to develop. But there's always going to be one little area, but it's probably further out. There might be a place, and it doesn't have to be where it's in or near downtown. It could be a place like how Alpharetta, because now everything is getting so saturated. So I live in Alpharetta, and now they're building like Cumming. Cumming is like the new hot area for the suburbs. So there's those areas in the country. So anywhere now where you see there's a lot of land and they haven't developed, those areas are going to probably start to pick up for building, because building right now is just a hot market. So land and building, but you just have to have your ear to the floor to know once something is about to get started. So say they're going to build a Hyundai plant somewhere or something, is coming to the area, that's going to make people grow. So if you're watching the news and they say they're going to put some type of large plant or Amazon or something that's going to produce jobs, then, and it's like a rural area, then you know that they're probably going to start building houses or some type of developments in that area. I hope I answered your question.
What's a good amount to put up for a secured credit card?
Well, usually you could start with 300. Usually is the base amount. And somebody, I think, had asked a question about emergency fund. Your emergency fund should be a minimum of 3 to 6 months. I don't think I've answered that question. I think you need to have a year depending on what you're spending, but 3 to 6 months minimum of an emergency fund. So if your bills amount to $2,000 a month, you should have a minimum of $6,000 minimum saved.
We've got, who would let me know where exactly my property line is? It says some neighbors can get very ugly in regards to the smallest inch.
A surveyor.
Okay. A surveyor. All right. What's the best step? What are the best steps for a person or people with bad credit to take to position themselves to buy property?
Well, it depends on what's on their credit. So if you have a lot of small charge-offs, if they're over 7 to 10 years old, the packet that I'm going to send to you, again, this is the same packet that all of the large agencies use. It has all the letters. Make sure you do it step by step. Don't try to miss a step on it, right? So trust me, this what you're going to get is the same exact. This is $1,000 gift. So taking anything that you have 7 to 10 years old, you start with those. You send those letters that are into that. You start sending those letters and you try to take anything that's newer. So if you have evictions, and like those are like just so bad. Evictions, repossessions, we look at those because if you had an eviction, like they think, okay, you didn't pay your rent. Unless it's like really, really old, but you still have to pay that amount. So unless you're able to get it off with the packet that I give you, and always know that you have to continue to send the letters. It might not do it on the first round. You might have to send the second round, but it tells you all of that in the packet. It gives you very detailed instructions. So you want to start understanding that anything over 7 years, it's not supposed to be on your credit anyway. So those are the ones that are easiest to get off. So you don't want to try to pay those first. All of the ones that are under 7 years, then you go by calling the creditor when you have the money. You wait till when you have the money and you say, hey, I want to make a deal with you. I want to settle. You know, I owe 300. Will you accept 100? Especially if it's another collection agency that bought it. So you want to start clearing it, but the packet that you're going to send will answer all of those questions. And then once you get everything cleared is when you want to start building your credit. And a way to build your credit, if you have family around you that have good credit and credit cards that are at 30% and they know they keep those credit cards at 30%, ask them to allow you to be an authorized user. You don't want the card, tell them they keep the card in their possession. You just want that line of credit on your credit, and that will help you start establishing credit as well.
Thank you. We've got on here, actually somebody, it's not a question, they just said that they don't believe in credit cards. Here, okay, in regards to credit, how do I find out why it was significantly reduced? This recently happened to me, and when I called Equifax directly to find out, they said that they were unsure. So you mean like your credit line was reduced? Is that what you mean?
Credit lines, if she's talking about the credit line, so like if you had a credit card and it was $1,000 and they reduced it to 500, it sounds like that's the question. It can be for several reasons. If you don't use the credit card forever and it has like a zero balance, they'll reduce it and kind of wake you up to start using it. And or you had maybe a late, or you keep going over, so they'll take you down. So, or you owed them money for a significant time. So say that you had $1,000 credit limit, you had it charged up to maxed out for $1,000 for like 2 to 3 years. And then finally you get some money and you paid it down to half. And then they brought it down to that half. So there's several reasons that can happen. So maybe one of those makes sense to you or that happened, but usually only for those reasons will they reduce the credit line.
You said the credit score.
Yeah, we have clarification, credit score.
Why would it when you charge money on your credit card and you have less than 30%, credit cards are like yo-yos. So if you have a credit limit of 1,000 and you owe 900, your credit score is going to drop. When you bring it down and you have only owe 300, your credit score is going to go up. However, if you've owed $1,000 on that card for a long time, they're going to wait for maybe 6 to 7 or 8 months to see if you're going to keep it at 30% before your scores start to rise. And you never want to pay a card down to 0. You want to keep it at 10 because sometimes it'll do the adverse reaction and bring your credit scores down too.
Awesome. Thank you. Y'all have any more questions? Y'all are welcome to unmute yourselves and verbally ask, or you can use the chat box.
I just have a question about the packages. So will we be getting those in our emails, or do you have to pick those up?
I'm going to send them to her. That'll be on Miss Courtney.
Yeah, I'm just gonna email it.
Thanks.
Yeah, so as long as your email is in the chat box. I've had people come and not put their email in the chat box. Put your email in the chat box, and I will, when I send out your diaper request, I will send that out as well.
Okay, any more questions?
Looks like we've got thanks, great information. I learned a lot. Looks like that might be it for questions. I love you guys. I'm so grateful you joined us again today. It's Thursday, so next class will be Monday at 1:30. I love you. You are worthy. Miss Tiffany Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. We got some great questions answered. Looks like, oh, we got some hearts sent. Okay. All right. Well, I love you guys.
Thank
Have
you
a
for
great
having
weekend.
me, guys. Thank you for having me. And know that no matter where you are today, doesn't matter what you've gone through, you can be and go anywhere. If I tell you just a piece of my story, a piece of my story. So just know that no matter what your today is, it doesn't predict your tomorrow, right? So go out and don't allow people to waste your time, because time is your most precious asset. Time is your most precious asset as women. And I hope I'm okay for saying this, Miss Courtney, that,
Yes.
you have, as women, we're so hard on ourselves. We look in the mirror, we see all these flaws, and we're just so hard on ourselves, right? And we always have excuses of, well, people always say, well, if I had your lifestyle, I could do this, or if I had this. No, if you only knew what I had to go through to get here, right? So understand, no matter where you are, you can do it. I don't care what you don't have, because people always say, well, because I don't have, well, I didn't have either. I was a little girl in the projects. I used to be homeless, literally sneaking under my friends' beds and sleep in their closets. And now I live the way I live because I worked hard. Nothing was given. And then with your children, that's my second book. My first book is going to be printed on the 29th, guys. So if you're following me, you'll see that. But my second book that I'm writing is called The Untitled Child, Give Them Nothing. Make these kids earn it. Learn how to say no and stick to it. I'm thinking we're all moms on here about to be, right? Stick to no's, discipline these kids, because you don't want the world to do it. So stick to no's and make your children earn everything, guys. That is my story. I'm sticking to it. Always reach out to me. I have a nonprofit for women, for girls. I love to help women. I love to be an ear. I love to be a shoulder. So feel free. I always love to help. So
Miss Tiffany, when you email me, please email me your social media information, because somebody wants to know your website. So everybody wants to make sure they stay connected with you afterwards.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, guys. Have a good
Bye,
evening.
y'all. Love you.